Excellent. Okay. Welcome everyone who's tuning into our video today. As I'm sure many of you are aware, coronavirus, we're living in what many are calling a new normal. The speed at which the virus has spread across the globe is simply extraordinary, and we've watched it wreak havoc on a number of businesses, regardless of size, forcing many of them to have to act very quickly with limited and very fast-changing information. Easily one of the most challenging environments for Main Street businesses we've seen in the last decade, and maybe the most challenging we've seen since the Great Depression. Because here at Endeavour we do work with a fair number of small and medium-sized business owners, we felt it would be worthwhile to bring on a professional here and discuss some of the various themes we're seeing develop in the workplace and some of the things that business owners should be thinking about as they navigate their business through this COVID-19 environment. So with me here today is Jaysa Toet. Jaysa is a partner with Acuity HR Solutions, a consulting firm built by award-winning HR professionals. She's a designated chartered professional in human resource and is a marketing and HR graduate from the Asper School of Business. When Jaysa initially joined Acuity, her focus was helping to build and grow and establish a recruitment division within the firm, which she did. And from there, Jaysa has pivoted her focus back towards some more traditional HR work, where she collaborates with a number of clients, providing both outsourced and on-site HR support. Today, as a partner, Jaysa leads client relations, business development, and marketing within the firm. Her client work focuses on HR consulting, training, and coaching, where she's responsible for creating customized recruitment processes and leadership searches at the C-suite and executive director level. So Jaysa, I hope I covered it all there. Thank you so much for joining us today, and excited to have you on.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to kind of dig into this topic and chat further.
Great, and I'm assuming, given the environment, you have lots on your plate, so we'll try our best to kind of keep it to 15-20 minutes here. But before we get into kind of the meaty or where we were going to go with this topic, I kind of wanted to turn it over to you just to tell us a little bit more about Acuity HR Solutions and the work you do, just to give viewers an idea of kind of the perspective that you're coming from when we're reviewing a lot of these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Acuity, so we're located over in the Exchange District, and the majority of our team is still currently working remotely right now. But our focus is on HR consulting and large-scale projects. We also do a ton of training, which we've had to kind of pivot during these times because a lot of our training is done in person or on site for our clients. So a lot of our training offerings have become virtual. We also do recruitment work, and we focus a lot on workplace investigations and engagement and other elements like that. So our team is really focused on the proactive elements of HR where we can be, and our clients quite oftentimes are small and medium-sized businesses, but we do work with large-scale businesses as well that do have existing HR teams. It just kind of depends on kind of the scale and scope, because if an organization has an HR team in place, then their needs from us differ from an organization that is smaller and maybe has no HR professional on site.
Needless to say, just given the clients that you work with, this environment that we're dealing with is obviously playing into a lot of the work you're doing here, which is again why we wanted to bring you on here and just get some insight from you, Jaysa. The first direction I wanted to take it was just to hear from you and the clients that you're working with. What are some of the biggest concerns that you're seeing from your clients? And if you could share some of the ways that at this point that you and your team at Acuity are helping your clients navigate those challenges and concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the key areas I would say would be just even making the transition to at-home work. People were kind of confused as to how they keep their teams productive, or what do we do? How do we make sure people are actually doing things? And of course, we've got our training that we've been able to pivot and to be able to support teams from a productivity standpoint. But I think it's really more some of the knowledge sharing that we're doing right now with our clients to help them understand that it doesn't have to necessarily be that everyone's watching the clock, and trying to help people kind of pivot to more of that deliverables mindset, that as long as the work's getting done, we need to trust our people and get those things accomplished, because this is a very new sort of environment for a lot of organizations. Some have been flexible in the past, and this was a little bit easier of a transition, but for some organizations, we're finding this is this is uncharted territory entirely. Another huge piece, though, that I would say that we're supporting our clients on is the communication elements. There's a lot of information out there, as I'm sure you can appreciate. The news inundates us, our social media feeds inundate us. There's a lot going around when it comes to just general information and news, but of course, then there's the new protocols that are coming out, and then it boils back down to, of course, what are individual companies doing? So there's a lot out there, and our clients have certainly leveraged us to support and communicating to their employees what's going on, helping them understand in key times of this crisis. What do we know? What things don't we know? And also, as they make some difficult decisions, we've also helped with the communication of that. A couple of examples, if you'd like me to share that, I can talk a little bit about that. Please. But yeah, a couple clients come into mind. One, the communication strategy for their staff was kind of earlier on in the COVID phase, the remote phase of things, to kind of help people understand the full scope of kind of what the organization was dealing with. And it really kind of translated to a very open and honest letter that came across to the staff. It was very clear in terms of the financial picture of the organization. It was very clear in terms of the items that the owners knew and the things that people didn't know, and how the organization was going to go about facing things. And it was really just incredibly transparent, which was very important, because the staff, if people don't have full and complete information, even in a time where things could be perceived negatively, they go to the worst case scenario. People will automatically go to a place or make up their own ideas as to what's going on. So it was really critical to set kind of a baseline of information, and for that organization to kind of have as much information as possible, kind of as I mentioned, that baseline. So that was kind of one example, but we've also seen organizations where people are getting into the return to work, and candidly, some people are nervous. Depending on the nature of the environment, they're nervous about, what does this return look like? Do we have safety protocols in place? Am I safe? Those sorts of things cross people's minds. So again, a communication and a baseline to everyone, so that everyone understood what was going on, but also to kind of help the employees within the organization understand the realities of how and why the organization needed to continue and open, because that was a very important piece to communicate, and also to encourage that open communication between staff and leaders, because the baseline of communication is great, but it needs to go a step further. So
I couldn't agree more. Like, transparency and when you're working towards a common goal, it especially in a stressful environment, it just makes sense to make sure that everything's kind of on the table. And I find that way, at least for me anyways, and from my experiences, there's a chance to get better buy-in and better camaraderie as you kind of navigate these environments. One of the things that I wanted to ask, when your clients are coming to you, are you noticing any blind spots to some of their concerns? Like, they're maybe focused on one area and you're going, okay, that's great, and yes, we do need to handle that, but hey, client X, you're missing a big part of what needs to be done over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it actually goes back to the communication piece a bit. So as I mentioned, these baseline communications are really critical. It's important that people all feel informed and have the right sort of information, because this truly is a time that, despite this being a negative circumstance, is an opportunity for organizations to solidify loyalty and to help their people feel safe and secure, and to build those relationships through appropriate communication. But it doesn't just stop at communicating to the group. It's really an important part of every leader's position to be communicating with their people individually. And it's been a huge blind spot for organizations to think that, okay, we can just issue this communication, or people can be educated by the news. Meanwhile, everyone's handling this sort of scenario very differently. Some people have personal circumstances or challenges that kind of compound with what's going on within COVID. And it's really important that leaders don't think that, oh, okay, people are at home, they're good, I'll check in on them every couple of weeks. That's simply not the case. Every individual is different and needs to be led as an individual. And so that approach is very important, and not just feeling as though group check-ins and those sorts of things can suffice.
Yeah, and so true. We had that even within our own organization. Initially, team meetings, everyone was coming on and having conversations, and things seemed to be great among everyone. But slowly, as we pivoted to more of those individual conversations that we were having with some of the employees here, it became quite apparent very quickly that, you know, we needed to do more and talk one-on-one, because group settings are great and it's nice to get everyone together. But people typically, if they're dealing with personal things at home, different personal problems, that's probably not the place that they're going to lay those out and let people know, or let the leaders know that, hey, I'm, you know, managing this at the same time as the working from home. So that was
Absolutely.
something that I know for us, initially we made the mistake of thinking, yeah, I know these group meetings are enough, but we quickly learned that no, we need to be checking on everyone individually as well.
Yeah, we describe it as leaders are responsible for both the performance and the professional health of an employee. And most people they understand what the performance element of it is. That kind of goes without saying. But the professional health side of things is, it really boils down to knowing your people and caring about them. You can't just expect that, oh, I'm managing them from a performance perspective, the rest doesn't matter. Or, oh, HR down the hall, they'll care about my people for me. No, not the case. It's the leader's job to care and understand them from a professional health perspective. And obviously you can't sacrifice one without the other. I mean, we need to care about our people. We need to understand what's going on, but we have a business to run too. And so we have to, within reason, be able to kind of balance both of those over a period of time. But again, this has been an unprecedented sort of time, and a lot of people are doing their very best and trying to figure it out as they go.
Which is why we're bringing you on here to kind of help the business owners sort through it a little bit. There are a ton of tasks and things that need to be done prior to reopen, if a business was closed and now is reopening. You know, extremely hard to get everything done all at once without missing something. In the work that you've been doing, Jaysa, what are some of the most basic requirements that you're recommending businesses need to have kind of ticked off their to-do list before thinking of bringing workers back into the work environment?
Yeah, so when you're considering kind of that return to work, there's some baselines that you can't go without. Of course, from a health and safety requirement perspective, there's protocols and legislation that you need to consider. So health and safety and any legislative requirements are for sure that foundation, and they can't be discounted. Now, for each individual business, that will also look very differently. So it's important to kind of understand what that looks like, and sometimes easier said than done, but I know that resources like the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce, they put out fantastic online resources. And I think the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce has a back to business phase book and that sort of thing, just kind of outlining the hygiene requirements and the kind of all the safety and health protocols, even by different sorts of businesses, so that organizations can kind of understand, okay, for my business, what does this look like? Because there's a lot of protocols, and I mean, we could spend a whole ton of time going over just the safety and health elements and the legislative sides of things. But for each business, honestly, my answer is it depends. So
it depends, and like you said, probably best to head to, if you're not working with a firm like Acuity HR who can help you out, those resources are probably your first place to go. And I know I've seen a lot come through from the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce, and it's been helpful. So yeah, I'd encourage anyone. I know I'm a part of a non-for-profit that it's essentially a gym facility. And yeah, we've had to go to those resources to figure out what does it look like for a gym, and they've been very helpful in pointing us in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, choosing some key resources that you trust, I would say, are important, because otherwise you can get lost in the mix. And government websites also have some resources as well too, of course, because they're the ones leading the charge. And so, yeah, I would say choosing some of those key resources. So from a health and safety standpoint and a legislative standpoint, you've got your bases covered. That would be the ultimate baseline before we consider all of the extras, because I think people, if they kind of know that, but then there's of course other foundational items that are going to be important before we go ahead and consider all the extra stuff and all the fun stuff and the culturally elements that come with coming back to the workplace.
So now that you brought it up, the extras, let's say we have a business, we've tackled the basic baseline of what needs to be done to invite workers back into the workplace. What are some of the other things businesses should be considering moving forward in this environment today, if they have, again, those basic items ticked off their to-do list?
Yeah. So from my personal perspective, I'll just talk a little bit about my HR philosophy, because I think some of this really comes into play with the return to work. It's kind of a bit of a reset in some ways. There's going to be things that people have figured out along the way over the remote phase and are coming back, and there's opportunities to do things better. And so for some organizations, HR is outdated, or it's transactional. It's maybe not very developed as a function within the organization. And the goal ultimately is for HR to be proactive and for it to be something that is strategic. And at least from my perspective, that's how I operate and how I do HR. But in a lot of circumstances, it can just be something that's the side of the desk. It's a paper pusher. It's not worried about, or it's at worst case scenario, it's the person who's just planning events or things like that. And a lot of organizations kind of think back, especially as people are returning, they want morale to go up and they want engagement to go up. And so they're thinking of these things like, okay, we're going to have a pizza party, or we're going to have a barbecue, or we're going to do whatever we're going to do. And those are the sorts of things that I don't want businesses to get caught up in, because those aren't the foundational items. Those are good things, don't get me wrong. But HR has the power to be far more strategic than that. And those aren't the things that are going to really impact your engagement anyways upon return with people. So when people are considering what are those baseline things from an HR perspective, I think it really depends on, have some of the basics already been satisfied? Like the nature of the culture, is it a respectful environment? Not only is it a safe environment, but is it a respectful environment? So that's part of the baselines. There's also areas too where if organizations haven't considered their workforce planning, or they haven't considered their compensation, or they haven't dug into certain areas within HR. For us, we best get to know an organization when we do an HR audit. So we're able to kind of really dig deep and find those areas that there's opportunity to improve and to do things better on. But yeah, there's a number of different areas that HR is and HR isn't. So
You mentioned the workforce planning there, which kind of brings me to the next topic I wanted to discuss with you here. When I was doing a little bit of research and just gathering some information in preparation for our chat today, one of the things I uncovered was that the number, and it wasn't necessarily surprising, but one of the number one things that we're seeing from employees is concerns around job security. And the unfortunate reality of the situation is that businesses are in survival mode, which means that they'll be hunting for ways to reduce costs, to just stay alive. And we know that sadly, this means for many Canadians that they may find themselves out of work. With that said, not all businesses are trimming the workforce either. We've seen a number of stories of businesses actually repositioning employees to handle other jobs within the organization or within their skill set. So I'm just curious, what can you share based upon your experience with the businesses that you work with, and what are some of the things that are being done from a workforce planning perspective? And maybe just give us an idea of I know we talked about it on the phone the other day, but what is, when we say workforce planning, what is that, and what are you doing in this environment?
yeah, absolutely. So in the context of COVID, I mean, we can think of workforce planning as both the recruitment side, like the attraction and the planning of people within the organization, and of course attracting people outside, but it also does involve terminations and things of that nature. I think organizations are definitely taking a very close look, necessitated by COVID, at their expenditures, and part of that, people are part of that, rather. And but as you mentioned, it's not always a negative. It's not always as though it's just that people are on the chopping block. It's a time for to reevaluate and to understand, what roles do we have? Are they critical to our operations, or can we be leveraging the talents of our people in a different way? Can we be looking at jobs more from a strength-based perspective and a task-based perspective related to what we actually need to accomplish, as opposed to, oh, this is a traditional accounting clerk position and this is what they need to do and fulfill. For example, we've had clients in the past who very much went this strength-based approach. So it actually was an accounting team that, instead of having traditional job roles and titles, the manager of the team decided, hey, you know what? I've got a team of great people, but I'm really not leveraging them to their greatest potential. We've got strengths here that are underutilized. We've got positions that, position profiles and descriptions that are outdated. They scrapped all of them and instead laid out a list of what all needs to get done, and then delegated tasks accordingly to people's
Okay.
strengths. So it really didn't have to follow this rigid job description process. And we're seeing that more and more, that organizations are moving towards kind of turning their minds towards how do we get done what we need to get done, but leverage our people's best strengths and abilities in order to do it. So so that's a real positive element, because you want people to love what they're doing. You want people to go in engaged and excited and energized. And honestly, that's one of the greatest pieces of engagement, is making sure that work is fulfilling for someone. And I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this as well too. If you're going in, you see the people you work with a ton, and the work that you're doing, you're conducting work more than you are spending time with family or doing leisure things quite often in a week. And so if you go into your workplace and you can't stand the tasks that you're doing, it's miserable. It's not helpful. And so if you have an opportunity as an organization to take a real hard look at what are the tasks we need to get done and where are the strengths on our team and how do we align those, that's huge for efficiency. That's huge for engagement. And that really is where some of that workforce planning can get a true shakeup at this point, because people are finally looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I think that's a great point. And I liked the idea around getting the tasks out on paper and really looking at them, and then evaluating your team and who do we have, what are the skill sets we have, and what can we kind of piece off. It has to. We've had discussions with individuals in the healthcare system. We actually brought on a professional that works with a lot of doctors, and he's been working with a fair number of doctors in New York. And he has a discussion online that I viewed, and they were talking about a similar thing, how in healthcare, it's had to turn, because this is such a new experience that everyone is dealing with, whether you're in business, healthcare, doesn't matter the industry. It has to be fluid, because things are changing, and they're changing quickly. And if you stick to kind of a rigidness in the organization, you end up really spinning your wheels more than getting things done.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. And it's important for organizations to have that flexibility, and also to kind of realize, on the flip side too, I had mentioned the termination elements. It's important for organizations to recognize, okay, would I hire this person today? If knowing everything that I know now, is this the right fit for them and for us? And unfortunately, some of those decisions are being made. But to be honest, my hope is that for those that are departing from organizations due to that, they do find their right fit and are able to find that at some point. And because there will be movement as things start to open up, the organizations are needing people and needing to find the right people. And it's a time of, like I said, a time of reset and an opportunity to do that for a lot of organizations.
well, I'll kind of cut it off there, but I have one more question before. First off, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of this knowledge. My last question for you, Jaysa, was just, if there's a business out there who's struggling with these type of things, how do they know? How do they know if they're ready to reach out to an Acuity HR Solutions?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, for us anyways, we operate on a basis of empowerment to our clients. So we don't like to get involved with clients and really dig our nails in to the point where they rely on us. So if an organization is curious about understanding how could we support them, or kind of finding out some of those blind spots for themselves, I would say at any point in time, there's an opportunity to have a conversation. We can have those initial conversations and help assess for them. Is there areas that we can help them with? Is there an area of strength for us that our team has to offer for them? And how do we go about doing that? So I'd certainly encourage anyone to follow us on LinkedIn. We provide a lot of great free resources there. Our website has a lot of great resources as well too. They can connect with our team also directly on LinkedIn. Those sorts of things are all free to organizations. So they can also assess at that point too, whether they're seeing something that they have an interest in. But all organizations are going to take the COVID phase as in a very different way, but beyond there too, there's going to be need for them to reach out to organizations like us, and we're here to help.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time today, Jaysa. I know you probably have lots to do in this environment. So best of luck to you and your team. And I hope to connect with you soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again for having me, Brandt. I appreciate it.